Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. There is something terribly wrong in the United States of America. Let me begin with the fact that the President of the United States is presenting the Medal of Freedom to Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York. Once upon a time, an American hero. Now a man who has been disbarred from the practice of law because of the absurd statements about the election of 2020. Rudy Giuliani maintains to this day that Donald Trump had the election stolen from him by fraud. And despite the fact that there have been numerous legal battles in some 60 states, every single charge made by Rudy Giuliani has been thrown out, including, by the way, judges put on the bench by Donald Trump. In short, Rudy Giuliani is now a tragic figure. Once a great man, a great mayor, once a man who was considered for the presidency of the United States, he has fallen to levels that one can hardly understand. The fact that he was responsible for two women, a mother and daughter, being absolutely harassed and hurt by false charges, ultimately proved by the courts, stripping Rudy Giuliani of much of his wealth as payment to these two women, who happen, I would point out, to be African American. There is something terribly wrong with rewarding Rudy Giuliani with a Medal of Freedom, America's highest civilian award. And yet there is an arrogance of power by this president that seems to defy logic. And that's not all. We read in the San Francisco Chronicle this morning under the headline, Pro-Trump Loyalty Test in Job Openings, whether servant applicants asked to show support for president's agenda. And the opening lines say it all. Some federal meteorologist jobs cut under President Donald Trump are open again at the National Weather Service office in California. But there is a catch. Applicants are being asked to describe their support for the president's policies and executive orders. I won't read the whole article to you, but I urge you to take a look at it to understand where we are today in the United States of America. A president of the United States who is asserting that in order to have a federal job dealing with weather conditions, you have to pass a loyalty oath. That's right, but not a loyalty oath to the United States of America. Oh, no. This is a loyalty oath to the President of the United States and his agenda. There is something terribly wrong with what is happening in our country today. We must also point out that immigrants are terrified. And if you are listening carefully to the fact that it appears that the president is going to put federal National Guard troops into the streets of Chicago, you understand how terrifying this truly is. If I had suggested 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that this would be a possibility in the United States of America, you would have said impossible. Well, my friends, not only is it not impossible, it is happening now. Congress reconvenes today. And what will the Republicans in Congress do in response to what I consider to be incredible abuses of power? Let me remind you that articles of impeachment were prepared against Richard Nixon, were prepared against Bill Clinton on simple grounds, the grounds of abuse of power. And I want to suggest to you, in the strongest possible terms, that that is precisely what is happening today. We have a president of the United States who is completely out of control, with no checks and no balances. How will Congress react now as it reconvenes? Because it is controlled by the Republicans, little will be done. But let me remind you that in exactly 1 month, the Supreme Court reconvenes. They will then have to deal after the first Monday in October rather. The first Monday in October, when they reconvene, they will have to deal with the question of so much dealing with Donald Trump and presidential power. This is a critical moment in the history of American democracy. I don't want to be someone who exaggerates. I don't want to be someone who is called an alarmist. I have been studying politics most of my life. I have had the opportunity to work on every level in government, federal, state, and local. I have had the opportunity to write books and reflect and teach on this very subject. And I will tell you without any hesitation or doubt that I have never been as scared for the future of my country as I am today. I want you to imagine for a moment that it was a Democrat in the White House doing what Donald Trump is doing now. I can assure you of one thing. The Republicans would have been up in arms. They would have cried dictatorship. They would have raised holy you-know-what. But because it is Donald Trump, because it is a Republican Congress with a Republican president, there is a deafening silence. I could go on and describe to you many other instances that disturb me, but I simply want you to be aware that I speak today not as a partisan, but as a scholar, someone who has studied the American system, and I believe someone who understands the system. When you have a president having a total disregard for what law should be, we're in big trouble. So, what is my warning on this September 2nd, the day after Labor Day, where we have a president who, in fact, is anti-labor, is trying to break unions, on a day when Russia, China, and India are meeting separately from the rest of the world in order to create some response to Donald Trump? What is it that I can really say to you except that we had better spread the word? We had better understand that the American system is being threatened by an authoritarian who sits in the White House and has no regard for laws or the Constitution. That, to me, is the most compelling thing I can say to you as we conclude a holiday weekend with little to celebrate. That is at least my take. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. You can interact with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and, of course, through my direct email. I want to say a special thank you to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this program, who makes sure we are up and running every single day. This is John Rothman. I will be back tomorrow, and I must tell you, you will do us all a favor if you make sure to follow along, let me know your thoughts on the show, and by leaving that review on Apple Podcasts, and by all means, share an episode with a friend. The more people that know about us, the better off I think, well, at least I think we are. This is John Rothman. I will see you tomorrow, right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.